Welcome, Amanda here with Crafting with Amanda, and today I am doing a 2-page layout that I found inspiration on the internet. I saw a layout that I believe Allison Davis had done, and it just struck me that these photos would be perfect with it. I found these photos, and they're of when we were redoing our studio at the farm. We got these new pantry units and they came in huge boxes. Well, as I'm looking at the colors and what the kids are wearing and the colors of the walls and the boxes, it's like, oh my gosh, what colored papers am I going to find that work with this? Well, the second paper pack that I touched was this summertime Four Seasons paper from Close to My Heart's new core catalog, and it just worked. So again, using that sketch or that layout that I saw as inspiration, I cut these green straight papers. They are the exact width of my photos, and I did have to play with my photos a little bit so that they were the exact same linear length, which turns out to be 10 inches and 3/4. So that's what I did for that green paper. It's 6 by 10 and 3/4. And then I cut a whole bunch of 1/2-inch strips, cut them down to 3-inch sections, and as you can see, I am making banner ends on them, and then I'm going to ink all of the edges, not the short edge that I tuck underneath, and I will do that off camera. But you can see here that I just kind of set up an assembly line, and because I'm using some cardstock colors, I wanted to make sure that I had some of the original color, like this capri, and then some of the lighter shade from the back, and they would be represented equally along the edge of my project. I went to my stamp stash and I found these stamps. I love the circle element, so that's what I was looking for, was kind of some circles. And so I went to my die cut and I found the shaker card rim and a stitch circle, and then my nested circles that actually were a gift from somebody, and all the various sizes that work with the stamps. So I'm going to go ahead. I know everybody likes to do this differently. I like to cut the paper that I'm going to stamp on first, and because of the acrylic stamps and I can see through where I'm stamping, I will do that later. And sometimes I'll use the negative from the cut circle in my MISTI or my stamp positioner and make sure that I have, like, especially if I'm doing multiples of one. But in this particular case, I was only going to do these few. And you see here I slipped a second piece of paper under that one die cut there on the left, and I don't recommend that if you're not gonna tape the paper underneath down, because it ends up sliding on me, which is fine. When you're in a hurry and you kind of skip a step, this is what happens to you. And I think it's here when I adjust the two plates that's when it made that slip. This is the Close to My Heart machine for die cutting and embossing, and I love it because you can do the 3D embossing folders, the 2D embossing folders, the normal ones that they first started with, and you can then adjust how loose or tight those plates go through, and so you're going to end up with a perfect cut or embossing without ripping through the papers every time. You just have to adjust. So here, all of these stamps, I decided I would show you me inking the edges, because then you could kind of see what I did. I did some rock and roll techniques in that I would stamp in one color and then roll the edges of whatever the image was, the clock or the fleur-de-lis, in other colors. I inked the edges of this avocado green stripe paper, and I'm lining it up between the 3 and the 9 on the Versamat. And I realized, oh, you put that down wrong for the right side page, and then it was a light bulb moment. Yes, but you did it in the middle of the page, so you can just turn the whole thing around. So that's what I'm doing here. And again, like I said, I cut these so that it would match the exact width linearly of my photos with the white mat around them. Again, I'm going to attach this honey butter base onto my Versamat, and I do that just because then I can use the ruler around the edge of the Versamat to help me line things up and make it, for me, come out, more precise without having to get persnickety about it. One of the nice things about having these on the Versamat and using the rulers is I don't necessarily need to pull out that right side page excuse me, to make sure that my photos are going to be lined up, because I'm lining them up with the numbers along the edge. I line the other photos up with the numbers along the edge, so it's just going to work out. Now here, because I have photos that am not near an edge, I'm going to go ahead and pull out my T-square ruler, and Close to My Heart has a new one coming out that the T and the ruler separate so that you can use them differently or together with a magnet. I'm very excited about that. It should be coming in stock in September. So here I'm just making sure that I have the right distance from the top and the bottom. And as I put this third photo down, I have a little sliver of green showing on the bottom left there. So I'm going to go ahead and just adjust these over a little bit. I think it's better to have kind of those extra pieces, if there are going to be any, along an inside edge, because your eye is less likely to see them versus being more towards the center of any artwork or layout. Again, I'm going to use my T-square ruler to help figure out where I want these lined up. In hindsight, I should have started from the right edge of this and worked towards the center of the layout. As it turns out, I got really, really lucky, and as I put these in, I only kind of had to shim out, as we'll call it, or space out a really tiny, like 2mm space at the end, but it could have gone very wrong for me. So I got very lucky. But if you do a layout like this, or even a card like this, I recommend that you start from your end, your side that you can't really change unless you're gonna trim off or have half pieces, but I didn't want that in this particular layout. As you saw with my what I was doing with the adhesive runner, and I love this adhesive runner for these kind of projects, is that I got a little bit onto the green avocado stripe paper, and I was just able to kind of rub that off with my finger, and now it's allowing me still to tack in all of these banners without worrying about, oh, I didn't get them in the right place, I gotta move them and I'm gonna tear paper. So I will go back later and adhere these down more securely, but for now, these are gonna just, that adhesive runner along the top and bottom edge, allow me to go ahead and place all of these. And this is when I'm starting to realize, uh-oh, you should have gone from the other side. And so I intentionally picked, there was like a little bit wider pink banner end sitting there, and I thought, okay, you have a wider gap at the bottom than the top. Not sure why, but I did. So here you'll see where I'm just kind of pulling them up, and I'm just splitting the difference between those banners to cover that little extra that I had. And on this side of the page, I did get smart, and I am going to start from the straight edge and work my way, because it really doesn't matter where I end on the right. I mean, it matters, but it's a little more flexible or forgiving, I will say. And I did look back at that first page just to see kind of what colors I had ended on, so that it would be some continuity as you went from one page to the other. This layout, it's funny, it came together quickly when I finally was able to sit down and work on it, but yesterday was one of those days that just, a lot of interruptions, getting things done. We have a new kitchen coming in at this house, and so I'm not negotiating, but I'm making sure that we have all the right things that we need for sinks and faucets and door handles, and then also that the contractor knows are there pendant lights that he's installing, or are there not pendant lights that he's installing, and where we want the oven, since it's not going back to where it was, and if we're going to finalize that electrical. There's just a lot of little things that you need to kind of be on top of. So I would work on that for a little bit, and then I would come in and work on this layout. And here with this fleur-de-lis, I wanted to make sure that it was on top and shown and full, and so I didn't want that tucked in underneath. It's funny how things like that just catch your eye. And here, as I'm working on this little vignette with going to my happy place, I'm realized that I wanted to use the big arrow because it kind of reminded me of hands on the clock. And then as I kind of took a step back, I realized that I needed some sort of pink in the bottom edge here, because there's pink banners in the center of the layout, but there wasn't anything down in that corner. So again, just kind of having that pink to invite you into the layout and look at the photos. These triangles that kind of work as arrows were just from a stamp set, so I stamped a couple of those along with the arrow that's on the clock. So everything is glued down now. If you can tell, my lighting has changed a little bit, and that's because it's later in the day, and here soon our youngest son is going to be coming home from school and I get distracted. So it's all good though. He came and sat on the floor and we talked through his week and day, and it was all good. So when I went and pulled out the thread to do these stitching marks, I found my rickrack ribbon, and I thought, oh, these would be perfect to kind of layer over in between some of the banner ends. And I was showing you, by making sure that the bumps line up together on that rickrack, I could just use my adhesive runner and make sure that it was making it basically a full sticker on the back of the ribbon. And I love that little Cricut spatula. It just helps pick up papers and go underneath everything. So I did 3 of the rickrack top and bottom on the left page, and then 2 more little pieces here on the right page. And I think it just helps finish out that element. And then I grabbed those 3 colors of floss and I did my stitching while my son was here visiting, and it was just a fun time. I had planned to do different kinds of stitching, but as it came together, this is what I wanted to do. Time was fleeting at this point as it was leading into supper time. These colored enamel shapes are new this year from Close to My Heart, and you get 3 tones of the same color. So like I pulled out the light blue, the dark blue, and then the pinks. And you get 2 sheets of these in each pack, which I think is great. So by having the 3 tones, here I'm lining up against the banner up at the blue to figure out which shade of that blue is going to work better with this layout. And I did choose the darker one, but because it has those 3 colors in it, I think you're just going to be able to find something that will work with every layout. I didn't want to do a shimmer brush on this just because I thought it would be too glittery, and these are more everyday moments, and not that everyday moments can't be magical and have Tinkerbell dust sprinkled throughout them, but I just kind of felt that I needed to keep it more everyday. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but that's why I made the choices I did. Here is a close-up. You can see some of that stitching. And the one stitching is kind of like the nail art, where you would put nails in a board, then you would wrap your string around those nails. I did that just using the holes. And then you can see all of the rickrack and how inking all the edges of those banners really help give it some depth. And there's some more stitching up here in the corner. I am very excited with how this layout turned out. I'm also excited to have one more memory of photos ready to go into the album. That last page was where you can connect with me on social media, Crafting with Amanda. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I will invite you to do that now. And here's another video you may be interested in. Blessings!